Welcome to You've Been Owned, the cybersecurity podcast where we talk about all things incidents and what we can learn from them, and really just anything cyber related. I'm your host, Gary Perkins. I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Information Security Officer for CISO Global, the company that meets all of your cybersecurity needs. And I'm overjoyed to be joined here today by Tiaira Fitzgerald. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about yourself. So happy you're here, and your company. What do they do?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm a security consultant with MegaplanIT. We do compliance work with PCI, NIST, HIPAA, SOC 2, which is kind of a newer...
You're throwing out all the four-letter words. Keep in mind, this is a family show. PCI.
And then we also do gap assessments, which we go into companies and we see where they're lacking to prevent the incidents from happening.
Okay, that's already fascinating to me because I always talk about the fact that I see these companies and they have so many challenges. What are some of the most common problems you see? I'm familiar with the ones that I see.
Most of the ones I see are like policies, documentation. That's a big one. Network diagrams. Sometimes they don't have them, or they're really outdated.
Yeah, really outdated. Exactly. That's my entire life. Yeah.
Or like the policies, they haven't been touched in like 5 years. I've seen that before. So it's mostly the paperwork.
Okay, so already these are some hot button items for me because I know that a policy in itself has probably never saved anything from happening. Why? It's a paper. And most often what I find is even if they do have policies, they're not actually following them.
No.
Right? So like, how do you ensure that like they're operationalized and that people are not just saying it, but actually doing it?
We try to walk through everything with them. It's kind of hand-holding. Like, we get it. Some people don't know what they don't know. So we try to go in and show them, like, this is where your gaps are. This is how we should improve. This is why should we improve this. Okay,
well, the why, I think that really resonates with me because we often hear, compliance is not equal to security. I'm sure you've heard that. What does that mean to you, if you can translate for the people that are watching here today?
So the way I think about it is people will come in and they want compliance. So normally these assessments are about 3 months-ish that we look at. And so they think of, I'm just going to be compliant within that 3 months, but they don't think about the rest of the time. Like the other months that they should be reviewing access, they should be reviewing their firewall rule sets. They just kind of overlook all of the things that should be day-to-day or annually or biannually.
Yeah, and it's the box checking. I get that. So when I hear compliance is not equal to security, I get what most people are talking about. What they're saying is that you can be compliant. It's a point in time, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're secure. Now, I would suggest that people need to take it further than that and understand that compliance is on the way to security, right? So if you can demonstrate that you're doing all these great things, that make operationalizing them and making sure you're doing them on a recurring basis is how you get to real security. But I would also say that you can have great security, but if you can't demonstrate it, you can't prove it, it's almost like it's a higher standard. So you gotta have both.
Yeah, that's the big issue, that we'll ask some questions and some people can't answer these things because it's not in their mindset throughout the year.
Yeah, I guess one of my favorites I see people squirm on is, where is your data anyways? And the most common response is, in Microsoft. It's like, yeah, but where? And then my favorite second one is a little bit unfair because then I'm like, where is it backed up to? Is it backed up and where does that go?
Somewhere in the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, where is that anyways?
One of them.
Okay, I want to go back to PCI for a second because you're the one who raised it. PCI is the only thing, well, it's slightly less scary than PKI, which I truly believe is a four-letter word. But PCI, I'm going to tell you my thoughts on what advice I give people. The first one is, if you don't have to do it, don't.
Yeah.
That's my first one. Second, if you can, outsource it. And the third one is, if you have to do it, if you really must, kind of constrain or restrict that card-holder data environment as small as you humanly possibly can if you want a chance at success.
Which is most companies' goals. But I have seen one that wanted to bring everything in-house, and we started the assessment and we're like, is this really what you want to do? And they're like, yeah, we want to bring everything in-house. And they had a really small scope to begin with because they already outsourced everything. And so we had to kind of show them, like, it's not as great as you think it would be. There's so much more that you would need to have in place just to be compliant.
Okay, this has already given me flashbacks of previous PCI compliance attempts and things. So in one of the organizations that I was at, we created a whole new, different environment for PCI. We segmented it off completely, which then meant that we had to replicate some basic kind of services in that environment as well. And it started to get pretty kind of inefficient or wasteful. But I mean, really, when you've got some hard, fast rules, things like thou shalt not have a rule that permits traffic from untrusted networks like the internet directly into the CDE, then this kind of becomes very difficult. I think one of the things that I saw was very cool in that environment is they are like a 100-year-old company and very large and like got a lot of legacy information. And some people thought that it was impossible to be compliant, but that's where tokenization saved the day. If you're not passing the card number through, it's garbage. It's not like it's going to get reversed or unencrypted or anything like that, because the information is actually garbage without the translation or crosswalk table. So I thought that was pretty neat. But what do you recommend for organizations that are out there and thinking, PCI sounds like a good idea, or I'm going to launch my new business and I want to accept credit card numbers. And I heard it in there. One is outsource if at all possible.
Oh, yeah, outsource it. Definitely read the standard. Some people just think like...
As a cure for insomnia, right?
Yeah, well, that too. Definitely that too. But just be familiar with the standard, what we're going to ask, how you need to outsource things. If you want to outsource things, just PCI website just has a lot of FAQs, just a lot of guidance for people that are thinking about PCI. Yeah,
I would prefer to spend less of my time thinking about things like PCI, because I was there when SOX was very popular, and from an IT and security perspective, I hate to say it, but I think it's a bit of it's a pretty low standard when focused on incident change management. Then I was there for the SAS 70s, SA 16, 18, and things, and that was harder. You had to show evidence, proof. But then PCI came along, and it was very prescriptive. In fact, when some of the earlier versions, it had things like firewall rule reviews had to be done quarterly until people bucked and screamed and said that they can't even do this, so it was backed off, and it's like twice a year now. But I mean, it's very challenging, all of these different compliance regimes. Like, what would you recommend companies do if they're looking at and evaluating their HIPAA needs, and now they've got things like CMMC and then they've got PCI? Aren't they going to just kind of drown under all of the compliance requirements?
Yeah, and it's kind of hard not to, because it is really complex. I think a good starting point is NIST, and they just came out with 2.0. I absolutely love NIST. It kind of gives you a really good foundation to get started on. It's a good one to really get started on, and then look into the more excessive ones like PCI. It is a little bit more strenuous, but it's good compliance. It's good structure and framework to have.
Yeah, and I would say that all of these things are there's a lot of overlap, right? Mm-hmm. So they're cross-mapped, and if you make progress on one, you're going to get credit for that in something else. In a lot of cases, there's a significant amount of overlap. I like you, big fan of NIST, because you just go over to their website and download it as an Excel, and then basically do your own in-house assessment initially, before inviting a third party to come in and tell you the 67 ways you suck. And they will do that, right? But do that when you think you're doing a great job. Then bring in the experts, and they will help you determine that you're not.
I kindly do it.
Yeah. Did you say you kindly do it?
I kindly do it.
The friendly neighborhood compliance officer.
I try to be, because, like I said, people don't know what they don't know, and it's not their fault. So I try to do somewhat of hand-holding and just guide them through on how they should be compliant, because I want to see them succeed. Mm-hmm. I don't want to see anyone in the news for a data breach.
Now, that's interesting to me as well, and I'm going to get controversial for a moment, because we're all familiar with auditors. They come in and they have a list of requirements.
Hate that word.
They determine you, they compare you against these things. But when I first got introduced to PCI a million years ago. He's very clear with me. He's not an auditor.
Yeah.
He's an assessor.
Yep.
And I'm like, is that better or worse?
It's
and
better.
I realized, I don't know. I'm not convinced. I don't know, because I like black and white. I like knowing, am I going to hit the mark or not? But obviously in this area, there's a few, there's some gray areas. There's
Yeah.
different ways to get to compliance. So the assessor approach is an interesting one for me in organizations going through this process. So I appreciate that you're helping guide them, but is there maybe conflicts of interest or agency problems? Because usually you either help get somebody ready or you assess them, but you don't do both, right? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with like NIST, I just show them where they're lacking, and it's their job to put that in motion once I give them the report, show them where they're lacking, and then the next year I will reassess. And I love just seeing how excited they are to show me the things they put in place. Oh, good,
because I thought where you were going, honestly, in my experience it's the same report.
No, a lot of them do actually listen to what any of our assessors have to say, because we are assessors, not auditors. We do try to help them. Me and my whole team are amazing.
Okay, so you're pointing them in the right direction, because it's true. A lot of these folks, it's not their core business is doing IT or cyber. And honestly, I recommend that organizations should focus on delivering value to their clients and delivering their services, which are rarely IT or security.
Yeah.
But that means that they don't necessarily know what to do or how to do it.
Or it's a smaller organization that one person's doing every single thing.
Oh man, they're not going to be set up for success there. That's not going to scale. Like, what do you do when this person's unavailable? Or I've seen the ones that they call, I was going to say Geek Squad or some roaming IT place that isn't really well equipped for the complexities of cybersecurity. So I don't know. So tell me a little bit more about security awareness and what role it plays in all of this.
I really like security awareness because thinking back a little bit in my previous roles, so I've done a lot of things in my life, law enforcement, medical field.
Okay, wait a second. We need to pause there. And we'll come back to the security awareness thing. Law enforcement?
Yeah.
You didn't cover this in your background just now. How did you get into cyber? Like, what are the different roles you did before this?
So I always loved cyber. That was actually my major when I first got out of high school, and I changed it. That's like the only thing I regret in life is changing that. But now I'm kind of still doing law enforcement. I investigate environments and I hunt and look for things and help people try to better their life.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so that's the way I look at it. But when I was doing background investigations, I wasn't security forward, so we had a lot of the security awareness training, and like people would send, they would send emails with social security numbers, but no one really understood, we can't do that. So security awareness training really helped that scenario kind of understand more on how to put that forward and not to send that type of stuff in email. And good security awareness is like the whole MGM hack, how that started with just a phone call.
Yep, social engineering.
Yeah, so
how long has this been around? Since snake oil and,
Yep, so that really helps people understand, don't do that. Don't just give out credentials, or really assess what is being said and understand, and not just give out anything over the phone.
But in that case, so we've seen examples of this even this week, and they create a sense of urgency, and there's usually an authority figure and tug on the heartstrings a little bit. So if you're not answering them, then suddenly a baby starts playing in the background. How do we get through to the people and get them to understand that there's a reason that there's a process in place and that you need to follow it every time, not just sometimes or when you're feeling like it, that there's checks and balances in there? How do we get that through to folks so that they're following it consistently?
I think that's
this is a struggle
so
for me.
hard. Yeah, it's so hard. This one assessment I did, I asked about security awareness training. They're like, yeah, we do it annually. We do phishing awareness. And during the assessment, they're like, yeah, we had an incident that the same person clicked on something yet again. So I don't know
The
how.
usual suspects.
Yeah.
It is true. I find this. There's a group that when we're telling them about all the security stuff, it's kind of almost lost on them because they're not the ones that we're worried about.
Mm-hmm.
And it is sometimes it's the same offenders. It's again, people want to help, right? So like, how do we better target these folks? I was going to be curious your thoughts on things like, I think we both agree that security awareness training should be mandatory. It should be at least annual, if not more often. But what about these phishing campaigns? Because a lot of folks are saying, look, that's not helpful. I kind of disagree. But
They're getting so good nowadays, too, with AI, because back then we would look for grammatical
grammar and
errors.
spelling mistakes. And it kills me because some people say, this one was really sophisticated because it had no spelling errors. I'm like, if that's the criteria, we're in big trouble.
My word. So I actually got a phishing email. I booked a cabin for my vacation next week, and their third party got breached, and they messaged me on WhatsApp saying like I need to put in my credit card, and I'm like, and they're like, oh, if you don't do it now, you'll
lose your booking.
Yeah. So me being me, I was a little frustrated. I'm like, why do I have to put in my credit card again? I've already done this.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, and I called them and I'm like, hey, why are you asking for this information again? They're like, we didn't. Our stuff got breached. And if that was anybody else, I could see why like that they would fall for that. Because there was no spelling errors. It was just me just kind of annoyed that they were asking for this information. And I could see somebody else that's not in this industry falling for that.
Yeah, that definitely speaks to me. I hate seeing people victimized, and if they have their stuff together and they do it in the right way, then there's going to be more victims. And it's interesting. I would be curious to see what happens, what they would have done with the credit card next, whether they would have sold that or they had something lined up, because you have to be able to monetize it, right? You have to be able to get the service or the equipment that is coming out. So that's an interesting one. But wow, that sounds recent. That's like
yeah. One thing that I did notice that is still consistent, so the spelling and like how they put everything together still looks good, but they use kindly a lot. And that word kindly I see over and over that they don't take out and that they still use.
Oh, that is interesting. So it's clear that AI is going to make this stuff a lot harder to detect and more frequent, more pervasive. I'm curious then, what are your thoughts around AI, and should we be putting the brakes on a little bit, or should we just dive right in? What are the positives and negatives of AI?
I personally like it, but I use it for studying. So recently, this is funny that this is just like a couple days ago, I was looking into different AI platforms to just help me study a little bit more. And the password length was 6 characters.
Wait, I think I saw that.
Yeah.
I think I saw that post from you.
I'm like,
and
why are we
I
still
was
doing this?
disgusted as
6
well.
Well, the company actually, because I called them out, and they actually got back to me.
Yeah.
They're like, thank you for pointing this out.
Should be at least 8.
Yeah. PCI just changed theirs to 12, but at least 8. Like
and I'm kidding, because like 8 has been the standard for so long. But it's like, folks, remember there's some complexity requirements in there. And a lot of folks will say your password should be long and strong. I kind of go with long or strong. It could be quite simple if it's very long, but I mean like a passphrase.
Yeah.
But at 8 characters, I mean, come on, or 6. Okay, so the truth is, as short as you've seen them, I saw a system once that had a 1-character password.
1 character.
And I followed up on it, and I asked, what's the deal? And the team said that they couldn't remove the requirement. That was the closest they could do, is set it to 1 character.
Well, that's where those compensating controls for PCI comes in.
Well, yeah, I hope so. And I hope it's not securing anything that's sensitive. But just so you know, the password is M. So it would, no matter which side you start from, would have been the maximum number of guesses. But yeah, hearing these kinds of complaints, like I couldn't remove it completely, the requirement for a password. So I just set it to 1 character. I'm like, it feels to me like we're not winning at this point. Now, granted, that was a number of years ago.
Well, kind of going back a little bit to AI, I personally like it, but I use it as a tool, not a reliant. I think it's really good to help study really get into the root of things. Like even PCI, kind of, if you're still studying for PCI, put that into AI, ask the questions over and over. NIST has came out with kind of a guidance for AI. So I really like that with them. I really haven't seen anything come out yet, though.
It is tricky. So I'm studying this as well for some presentations that I'm doing, and I'm looking at the legislative frameworks and the policies that are out there. Everybody seems to know that we should have some guardrails around this. They just don't know what. And really, I would point to the fact that it's changing so fast that they can't keep up.
Yeah.
So that's why even like an AI certification or something, it's like, what are they going to test you on? Because whatever it was may have changed, the next week. But what guardrails should we have in place for this stuff?
Well, don't put in, of course, sensitive data.
Yes, we both agree on that one. That's the first one for
And
sure.
I feel like that's not really changing. Don't put in your social security number. Don't put in your passwords, your birthday, your address. Even if I do some research on things to do in Phoenix, I don't put that I live in Scottsdale.
So you do that too. I that's what I want out of it. I want an event planner out of it.
Yeah.
It knows the stuff I want and goes and pursues it.
But I think it builds kind of this knowledge about you.
That's my step number 4 is watch out for the correlation over time, because even though you're leaving out key details over time, you're human, it'll infer these things and it'll have a profile on you.
Yeah, even on the ones I do sign up for, I don't put my first name, I put my middle name.
Interesting. That's smart, because we talked about this with some other sessions and things, even those security questions when it's like, what's your what's the street you grew up on, and then you say unicorn. It's completely different or irrelevant, but also the names, and then using the aliases and such with email, saying when you sign up, use a custom email address, so then when somebody's coming after you later where that came from.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What are some of the other challenges you see, though, in your work with folks? Do you have any gory stories, anything that's broken or not worked out the way people expect they did?
Just the only really one that I have was that company that wanted to bring everything in-house that already had a smaller environment. They outsourced everything, and they're like, yeah, we're going to bring everything in-house. I'm like, you're going to need a lot of work.
So, yeah, I'm curious about that, whether they just didn't think about this or think this through, or who had made these decisions. I'm sure there was some method to the madness, though, right? Because we saw with cloud is everybody tried to move as much as possible to the cloud, and then they realized, wait a second, our costs are completely out of control here. We didn't have that problem on-prem when the max storage we had was 1 terabyte, and when it started getting full, we'd clean it up. But do you think they just didn't think this through? They didn't.
I think that's where it started. That the budget, they were trying to see how they can minimize the budget, and if bringing everything in house would minimize it. And I let them know quickly, that's not going to happen. It's going to be a lot more a heavy lift.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It's a lot of money with outsourcing, but it doesn't leave you open to risk. And so I think minimizing that risk is a better idea.
I'd suggest it probably does leave you open to risk, just different ones.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because we're often trying to transfer this liability or risk by bringing in a third party, but ultimately the folks they're still going to come back to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even in your booking case, you're still looking at that booking organization thinking, well, first you should have protected your stuff better. But then second, it's how about telling me when you've got a problem so that I can be well equipped? I get it. It happened quickly with them.
Yeah, and when I went to sign my final documents, they asked for my driver's license number, my birthday, and I'm like, you don't need to know this.
Shoe size. No, people don't. They don't think about that. They don't think about that.
And they just put it in.
Yeah, they don't need this information. I know I had examples before where a person was returning something at the store and they asked for their zip code. That's fine, but then they started to ask for this other more sensitive information like their driver's license number, and then it's like, wait, why do you need this?
Yeah.
The answer is you don't.
Luckily, I was able to put NA. Normally, It would have rejected it because
Yeah.
it wasn't a number. I'm like, I'm just going to try to put NA, and it worked. I'm like, that's fine.
Oh, honestly, when you mentioned the 6-character password and I saw that on social media, I was going to volunteer ABC123 because that's a common one that I see.
Oh, that's a good one. I haven't used that one in a while.
Oh, so my question is, if you're an organization that is starting out and is going to start their compliance journey, how are they best to approach that? I mean, most companies are going to have something in place for controls, but probably not what they need to. What are the best first steps?
Just having those conversations, like I said, reading the standards, that will really prepare you because it pretty much spells out everything that you need to do, what type of evidence we're going to ask for. So just really read the standards and then have those conversations. Okay, what do we need to do to prepare for this?
Yeah, and I would say, know what you have to lose and know why you're going about this. Don't just do it for compliance sake. Know what you're actually benefiting. But I want to divulge a secret or a confession. I'm not sure if you know this already, but most organizations, when it comes to audit, do very little until they know the auditor is coming. And when the auditor is coming, days or maybe a week ahead, then they scurry and try to go and grab all of this stuff. And then you show up and you start asking for things, and now it's phone a friend inside the organization asking for it. It's very rarely a mature or proactive compliance that I, expect to deliver on. When you show up, I have the stack of evidence there. Anything that I can do in advance, it's already there.
Oh, that's so nice.
but some of it you have to generate live. So
Yeah.
you're going to be I want to see, I want to pick a random example in these 50 accounts and then show me that MFA is enforced. But I don't know. Do you see this on a regular basis? How many organizations are really prepared in advance versus just it's like firefighting when you start asking them these questions?
I wish there were more because no one's asking for this evidence prior to the assessment. So I get that they're not looking and pulling this stuff down before the assessment. So they're normally getting it during the assessment because they're reminded hey, we need this.
Well, and I get it. Most of the folks have other work to do. They have their other jobs.
Yeah.
This isn't their full-time job. If they had a full-time person for compliance whose job it was internally to grab and present all this stuff, then that would be fantastic. But honestly, I'm sitting here just having trauma and PTSD over the fact that you mentioned the diagrams and things out. That's a classic one for me, especially when it's incident response to come in. I'm guys, there's a couple of things I need. One of them is this diagram. I'll take anything. If it's out of date, that's better than nothing. But rarely do you have something that is complete. And it's the things that are missing that are the things that end up killing you, right?
Yeah, I love when I ask for this stuff and they give it to me within a couple days. It's the little things that excite me.
But the timestamp shows it's 24. The ink isn't even dry on this thing if you start to try to smudge it.
Or just don't put dates on it.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
that's fine.
Last reviewed, at least. I guess a lot of folks view this stuff as optional, right?
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because it makes me sad. I don't go in and judge these people. I just wish they had security at more of a conversation than just when we come in. Because I don't want to see anyone fail.
Yeah, but I think we've seen this over time. It's really it's often regarded as an IT function, and it's not the business enterprise risk that it should be.
Yeah.
It should be up at the board level, something they're thinking about, because they will, either when they have an incident or when they fail PCI compliance, which I understand can be costly.
Yeah.
Yeah, recurring fines.
Fines and reputational risk is on the line.
Do you ever run into organizations, because I saw one of these in the past, that just looked at the recurring fines and thought, that's less than having to do the work to fix this stuff, so I'll just take the fines.
Yeah. I think that's what Meta does because they've been fined in GRPD.
The GDPR, that's right. And in fact,
we don't do that with that acronym, so I don't know it very well.
It's true that it would be a rounding error for them, right?
Yeah.
So these fines aren't enough to cause them to change their behavior.
But they're very few and far between. A lot of these companies can't afford that. They can't afford a breach. They can't afford any of that.
Can put them out of business pretty quickly. That's
Yeah,
right.
and I don't want to see that with anybody.
Neither do I. What would be, as we're running out of time here, what would be the number one tip that you would give folks, either at work or as individuals at home when you're out there? What would you tell them to do to try to avoid becoming a victim?
Just have these conversations. Just kind of read the news, see what's going on. Just kind of stay updated because a lot of things change.
Be aware and use MFA. That would be. I'm just kind of slipping it in there.
Go on and be PCI awesome.
Oh, what was that? Go on and be PCI awesome.
Yeah,
I've never even heard.
I stole that from my boss, Anthony Petruso.
Yeah.
So I can't claim that one.
That's very.
But it's nice.
Very cool. Now I want to see stickers and branding associated.
We're gonna
with
do
that.
T-shirts. Yeah.
And be honest, I told you from the beginning, PCI is not the thing that I run out and just want to spend a lot of time doing if I didn't absolutely have to. And the only thing that I like less than that is PKI, which is the project killer. But that's for another time. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing your experience and knowledge with us here today. That's, I think, the end of our time. I really want to thank NextSpace for providing this awesome facility, and Jeff and the AV team, and really everybody who's tuned in to learn a little bit more. Really, through continuous learning and lifelong improvement, we can get better at this. It's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to be a victim, and we really want to make sure that you aren't. So stay safe out there.